Good morning, all. Suburban Sentinel here, coming to you once again from deep inside the Arabian Peninsula. And I had a few PMs of people asking, what is life like here in Saudi Arabia? So I figured at the beginning of each video, I'll divulge some tidbits about life here in the kingdom. One of the most interesting aspects of the kingdom, or I can't speak to the whole kingdom, just as to this province, is that there is no home postal delivery. You do not get mail at your home, ever. It's a really unusual setup. And when I first heard about this, it really boggled my mind. How do you function? Well, actually, it functions quite well. For most of your bills, you are able to pay them and get them through either internet or through the ATM. Many people pay most of their bills directly through the ATM. Some bills do come to your house, but they do not come through post. For example, the electric bill. All they do is a guy runs around the neighborhood and puts your electric bill in your door. It's a really interesting setup. And quite frankly, I love it. Once I got used to it, it's the greatest thing because there is no junk mail. I used to spend not a huge amount of time, but time I consider wasted back in the States, sorting through crap that we would get in the mail, most of which never even made it into the house. So I absolutely love being able to pay bills through the ATM at my convenience and not having to see one piece of junk mail. But on to the business at hand. Anyway, in the last video, we were talking about de facto debtors' prisons in the United States. And essentially, debtors' prisons were, in theory, eliminated in the 1800s. Yet, theories don't always work out the way we expect. In theory, I was born rich and handsome, but we all know how that went. And it is early morning here. I don't know if you can hear this, but the 5:30 a.m. prayer horn is going off. Let's see if you can hear this on tape. That prayer horn goes off 5 times a day, and the first one is before sunrise. So that's something that we have to get used to. Anyway, debtors' prison. There are a lot of videos out there about the de facto debtors' prisons in America, but there's very little information available on what to do about it. There's very little practical advice. So let's see what steps we can take to do our best to avoid getting jammed up with the judiciary on some debt, whether that debt is real or imagined. The first and best way to stay out of debtor's prison, or at least de facto debtor's prison, is to stay out of debt. One of the major reasons my wife and I are doing a stint in Saudi Arabia is this will allow us to return to the United States debt-free, and we will not have to incur any debts at all for the rest of our natural lives and not have to work. So staying debt-free is, of course, the best way. The second thing to do is to be careful with whom you do business. A lot of these debts are phony baloney, or they make up charges, or sometimes it is just a simple mistake. I do the best that I can to only do business with reputable companies that don't often make mistakes, and when they do, they are quick to correct them. As a corollary to this rule, I like to keep it simple. I like to minimize the number of companies I do business with. Even though it might cost a little more, I like to bundle. For example, you can get your phone, internet, and cell phone service, and even though these are not my favorite types of companies, you can bundle them together so you have fewer accounts to keep track of. I like to use a reputable insurer and put all my insurance through a single carrier so I have fewer bills to deal with. Another thing I recommend is to use one single mailing address in the United States, of course, not here because there is no home delivery. But in the US, I like to use one of those mailing services where you go and you can have a box there, but it does have a street address, and you hire them on a semi-annual or annual basis to deliver your mail and have all your mail sent to that single address. This is particularly important if you tend to move around a fair amount and bills or demands may not catch up with you immediately, or if you travel a lot. I think it's worth a couple of $100s a year to have the professional mailing services send you all of your documents. That way you are almost assured of not missing any important payment demands, court notices, and the like. Rule number 5, never ever just completely ignore a demand for payment, a letter from a collection agency, and especially a court notice. Always take steps to address the issue if your name is on it. Even if it's not exactly your name, but it's close to your name, you can get yourself into a big jam if someone sues you on a debt that's not even yours. So don't ignore these types of demands, address them. And that brings me to rule number 6. And that rule is publish or perish. Never ever conclude a demand for payment or try to fix a mistake over the telephone. This is a publish or perish world. Always do this sort of thing, whether it's trying to fix a mistake or once a mistake has been fixed, confirm that it has been fixed in writing and get proof of mailing. And if it's not mailing, maybe something like a telefax or a screenshot of an email. You want proof that the notice was sent, and you also want confirmation or proof that the notice was received. I went through this with my cell phone carrier, which is unfortunately one of the bills I could not deal with completely before we left the United States. So I ran around with this big ugly mess with our cell phone carrier, or former cell phone carrier, who shall remain nameless, Verizon. But that finally got squared away because I had the appropriate evidence. And that brings me to my last point, which I believe is number 7, maybe 8. I don't know. I can't count that high. Anyway, if you run into a dispute with a collection agency or a bill that you do not believe is yours, or you get dragged into court, if at all possible, hire a lawyer. Now, I know it's expensive, but these debtors' prisons exist because people, ordinary people, are not familiar with the judiciary system. They don't know how the courts run. No one knows exactly how every court runs. But if you hire a lawyer, a local lawyer preferably, to navigate you through the process, you will more than likely get your rights enforced. I know this can get expensive, but in my humble opinion, in most cases, it would be money well spent. And that is one of the most unfortunate and unfair parts of this whole de facto debtors prison scam, is that it adversely affects the people who can least afford it. Most people you see who go to debtors prisons cannot afford an attorney. Right? Often they can't afford these nominal fines. It's ridiculous to put people in jail over parking tickets. Well, that's all I have to say about staying out of debtors' prisons, at least for now. Thanks for watching. This is the Suburban Sentinel. Please thumbs up and subscribe if you like what you see. Questions, enlightening comments, and contrary opinions are always welcome. Be safe, everybody.